You notice the pause before the answer, not the answer itself, the tiny delay before it arrives, the way her smile appears half a second too late, the way his voice suddenly becomes softer, calmer, almost rehearsed, when he says he is fine. Most people hear the sentence. You notice the tension hiding underneath it. And the strange thing is this. You usually know something is wrong before there is any proof that something is wrong. Not because you are psychic, not because you are dramatic, and not because you spend your life trying to overanalyze people. Your mind simply learned to detect emotional shifts long before you had language for what you were detecting. If this already feels painfully familiar, subscribe to the channel, because this is the kind of psychology many people silently live with for years, without ever hearing it explained in words that actually fit the experience. For many women, this kind of awareness gets dismissed with lazy labels. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive. You read too much into things. You always assume something is wrong. But those labels only describe how your awareness looks from the outside. They do not explain what is actually happening underneath. Because underneath, something much more precise is happening. You are not simply hearing words. You are tracking inconsistencies. You notice when someone's energy changes before their behavior changes. You notice when a person becomes emotionally distant before they physically pull away. You notice when kindness suddenly feels strategic instead of genuine. You notice when silence feels heavier than usual. And most of the time, you notice it automatically. You walk into a room, and before anyone says anything, your nervous system has already started collecting information. Who is irritated? Who is pretending to be okay? Who feels left out? Who is trying too hard? Who should not be challenged today? Which conversation already carries tension underneath it? Someone else walks into the same room and sees people sitting around a table. You walk in and immediately feel emotional weather. And usually, people like this did not become observant randomly. Observation became useful. Sometimes necessary. That is one of the clearest signs of what we might call traumatic intelligence. Not a formal clinical diagnosis, but a psychological pattern where prolonged emotional stress sharpens a person's ability to detect subtle emotional danger. Psychologist Judith Herman wrote extensively about how trauma can reshape the way human beings relate to safety, connection, trust, and control. And for many people, intelligence does not begin with curiosity. It begins with adaptation. Think about that carefully. Some minds are trained by school, some by ambition, some by creativity, and some are trained by unpredictability. When your environment teaches you that emotional shifts can suddenly become emotional consequences, your brain starts learning survival through observation. You become highly aware of tone, timing, body language, silence, pauses, micro-expressions, changes in rhythm, not because you wanted to become this alert, because your nervous system decided it was safer to notice too much than too little. That is why traumatic intelligence often feels less like a talent and more like a system that never fully shuts off. You do not just hear, "I'm fine." You hear, "Do not ask me again." You do not just hear laughter. You hear strain inside the laughter. You do not just notice affection. You notice hesitation attached to the affection. And the exhausting part is that you are often correct often enough to trust your own pattern recognition. That is where things become psychologically complicated. Because once your brain learns that small emotional details can predict larger emotional consequences, it becomes difficult to stop scanning for those details everywhere. A short text message can become emotionally loud. A delayed reply can feel strangely threatening. A simple change in someone's tone can replay in your mind for hours. Not because you enjoy anxiety, because at some earlier point in life, subtle shifts were not harmless. Maybe a parent became quiet before becoming angry. Maybe love became inconsistent without warning. Maybe someone's mood controlled the emotional temperature of the entire household. Maybe affection could disappear unexpectedly. Maybe conflict arrived without explanation. So your nervous system adapted. It learned to detect storms while the sky still looked normal. And here is the part many people misunderstand. Traumatic intelligence is not just emotional sensitivity. It is predictive sensitivity. Your mind constantly tries to solve situations before situations fully happen. You rehearse conversations before you have them. You prepare multiple versions of the same sentence. You imagine possible reactions in advance. You think about how something might sound before you say it. You prepare softer wording, safer wording, less confrontational wording, emotionally strategic wording. Not because you are manipulative, because your brain is trying to reduce uncertainty before uncertainty turns into emotional pain. You are not simply communicating. You are managing emotional risk. And honestly, this can make you incredibly intelligent in certain environments. You notice what groups need before anyone asks. You sense tension early. You understand emotional dynamics quickly. You recognize hidden conflict before it becomes visible conflict. You can often tell when someone is lying, withdrawing, pretending, or emotionally checked out before other people notice anything at all. But there's another side to this intelligence that people rarely talk about: the cost. Because when your nervous system becomes too trained to detect danger, neutral situations can start feeling emotionally unfinished. Nothing feels completely simple anymore. A text message is not just a text message. A pause is not just a pause. A canceled plan is not just a canceled plan. Your mind automatically searches for hidden meaning underneath ordinary events. And sometimes that search becomes exhausting. You stare at one sentence for 10 minutes, trying to hear the emotion behind it. The message only says, "Sure," for letters, but your nervous system immediately starts analyzing tone that does not technically exist. Are they upset? Did something change? Did I ask for too much? Are they being passive-aggressive? Should I clarify? Should I apologize? Should I act normal? And while someone else moves on emotionally within seconds, your brain continues investigating possibilities long after the conversation ends. That reaction does not come from weakness. It comes from history. Because if earlier experiences taught your nervous system that small emotional changes could lead to conflict, rejection, instability, or emotional withdrawal, your body learned not to ignore details. Neuroscientist Joseph LeDoux studied how the brain processes fear and threat, showing how the nervous system can react before conscious reasoning fully catches up. In other words, your body can begin preparing for danger before your logical mind has even decided whether danger exists. That does not mean every fear is accurate, but it does explain why some people feel emotionally exhausted even during relatively ordinary situations. Their nervous system is constantly calculating possibility. And for many women, this pattern becomes even more intense because of social conditioning layered on top of emotional survival. From a very young age, many girls are unconsciously trained to monitor emotional environments. Be polite. Do not upset people. Notice moods. Keep harmony. Avoid conflict. Manage reactions. Stay emotionally aware. Do not sound rude. Do not sound selfish. Do not sound difficult. Now combine that conditioning with trauma, unpredictability, or emotional instability. The result can become a kind of hyper-awareness so advanced that it almost feels architectural. You build internal emotional maps everywhere you go. You monitor people automatically, adjust automatically, adapt automatically. Meanwhile, your own emotional needs quietly move to the background. And this creates one of the strangest contradictions of traumatic intelligence. You become exceptional at understanding others while becoming disconnected from yourself. You know exactly when someone else feels abandoned, but struggle to notice your own exhaustion. You know how to comfort people beautifully, but feel strangely guilty needing comfort yourself. You understand emotional complexity in others, but minimize your own pain because it feels inconvenient. And eventually, you may become so used to functioning as the emotionally aware person that people stop asking whether you are okay at all. Because competence can hide suffering extremely well. That is another painful reality people rarely discuss. Traumatic intelligence often gets rewarded socially. People call you mature, wise, empathetic, strong, reliable, emotionally intelligent. But many times, what they are actually benefiting from is your adaptation. You anticipate needs before people ask. You absorb emotional tension quietly. You stay composed under pressure. You make difficult situations manageable for everyone else. And because you perform stability so well, people often forget how much effort that stability costs you internally. But the moment your awareness starts protecting you instead of serving others, reactions can suddenly change. The same intelligence people praise becomes negative. The same awareness becomes overthinking. The same boundaries become coldness. The same pattern recognition becomes attitude. And that confusion can deeply affect a person psychologically, because the skill that once helped you survive may feel welcomed only when it keeps you useful. The moment it begins protecting your peace, people may become uncomfortable. That is why many emotionally perceptive women spend years doubting themselves, even when their instincts are frequently correct. They were taught to trust their awareness when it benefited others, but distrust it when it benefited themselves. And over time, that creates internal conflict. You start questioning your own perception constantly. Am I imagining this? Am I too sensitive? Am I reading too deeply? Am I making this bigger than it is? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And that uncertainty itself becomes emotionally tiring. Because traumatic intelligence does not automatically create peace. It creates alertness. And alertness can become addictive without a person realizing it. That may sound strange at first, but think about it carefully. When your nervous system spends years operating in high awareness, calm can begin to feel unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things often feel unsafe. That means peace itself can start feeling suspicious. A healthy relationship may feel boring. A stable environment may feel emotionally empty. A calm partner may feel emotionally unreadable. A quiet evening may feel strangely uncomfortable. Not because you want chaos, because your nervous system became more familiar with intensity than ease. You learned how to function during pressure. You became excellent in emergencies. In fact, many people with traumatic intelligence are unbelievably effective during crisis. When something goes wrong, they become focused immediately. They know what to do, who to call, what to fix, how to stabilize the situation, how to stay calm while everyone else panics. But when life becomes peaceful, they sometimes feel restless inside their own body. The scanners remain active, but there is no emergency to justify them, and that can create an uncomfortable emptiness. Your intelligence suddenly has nowhere to go. So unconsciously, some people start recreating emotional intensity without realizing it. Overworking, overcommitting, choosing emotionally complicated relationships, obsessing over problems, searching for hidden meaning everywhere, staying mentally busy constantly, because pressure feels familiar, and familiarity often disguises itself as safety. This is why healing from trauma is rarely about becoming less intelligent or less perceptive. It is about recalibration. A smoke detector that survived a real fire may become sensitive enough to react to burnt toast. The detector is not broken. It was trained by danger. But calibration can change. Slowly, carefully, gradually, not through shame, not through pretending your instincts are meaningless, and not through forcing yourself to stop noticing things. The goal is not emotional blindness. The goal is emotional accuracy, learning the difference between what is happening right now and what my nervous system expects to happen because of the past. That question can completely change a person's life, because not every silence means rejection. Not every delayed reply means anger. Not every change in tone means abandonment. Not every conflict means danger. Some situations belong to the present, not the past. And one of the hardest parts of healing is allowing your body to experience safety without immediately searching for hidden conditions attached to it. That takes time, especially for people whose nervous systems learned that peace could disappear suddenly. You may notice this conflict most strongly in relationships. You want closeness deeply, but closeness also activates fear. You crave emotional intimacy, but part of you stays alert while receiving it. You may love someone genuinely while simultaneously preparing emotionally for disappointment. You may need reassurance while feeling embarrassed needing reassurance. You may want someone to understand you without needing you to explain everything. And sometimes, you secretly wish people could notice your pain automatically the same way you notice theirs, because you spent years studying emotional signals in other people. Part of you quietly hopes someone will eventually study yours too. And honestly, that longing makes sense. But here is an important truth that traumatic intelligence eventually has to learn. Understanding other people perfectly will not automatically make you feel safe. You can predict behavior accurately and still feel emotionally tired. You can understand psychology deeply and still struggle to relax. You can read people beautifully and still abandon your own needs while doing it. Awareness alone is not healing. Sometimes healing begins when awareness stops functioning like permanent surveillance. And maybe that is the real transformation. Not becoming less perceptive, becoming less afraid of peace. Learning that calm is not laziness. Rest is not irresponsibility. Softness is not weakness. And stability is not a trap waiting to collapse. There's a version of your intelligence that still sees deeply without constantly expecting pain. A version that notices patterns without becoming consumed by them. A version that can enter a quiet room without searching for emotional danger hidden inside the silence. That version of you is not naive. It is simply no longer living entirely in survival mode.